This poem is Put Attention by Laurie and Guerrero. Put attention, Grandma would say, as if attention were a packet of salt to be sprinkled or a mound we could scoop out of a carton like ice cream. Put attention. Put attention. Put it where? In her hands? In the percolator? On top of the television set that seeps fat red lips and Mexican mustaches? Next to the jade Buddha? Between La Virgen and cousin Pablo's sixth grade class photo? Marshmallowy teeth jumping out of his mouth? We never corrected her. Like the breast, Spanish lulled Grandma's tongue as we threw down shards of English, laughing for her to leap in and around. Put attention, put attention. Put it where? Shall I put attention in my glass and drink it soft like Montepulciano de Abruzzo, like Shinerbach, horchata? Put attention. Ponga atención, she tried to say in our language. Put attention, somewhere large, back into her eyes, in the part of her brain that doesn't remember her own daughters, how to make rice, translate instructions. I was really moved by this poem as soon as I read it. And I think one of the things that moved me initially was the way that those things get translated, right? Like put attention is just the direct translation, even though if you were to translate it, we would say, oh, it means pay attention. But the word put and how that immediately lets us know that the grandmother doesn't speak English and this sort of this wrongness of the phrase, but then how it shifts and turns into this real sad beauty and honoring of the grandmother and recognizing what happens with dementia. I'm assuming dementia, something of where the mind is no longer functioning at the level we want it to be functioning, the memory, etc. Put attention somewhere large. That feels like, oh, right, this is where I want attention to be, back into her. And that move I thought was so authentically wise, between that penultimate stanza and the last stanza. The tension around the language, both Spanish and English, and the between space feels really alive in this poem and is illustrated so beautifully by the way in which you have the kids almost poking fun at her. And of course, that turns into a sort of a loving manner at the end. But I think that's very true for many people, the tension between speaking English, not speaking Spanish, or vice versa, and how generationally that not just becomes a chasm in our language, but in our families. I think it speaks to many different, Latinx folks across the board. I think for me, it's interesting, my grandfather spoke Spanish. My father speaks Spanish. My brother is fluent in Spanish, my older brother. And Spanish is I can speak some of it, and I can hear it. I'm one of those kids that grew up, I can understand quite a bit of it, but I'm a little shy when it comes to speaking it. And yet I can be in conversation and think, oh yeah, I know exactly what's going on. But then if you ask me to speak back, I will answer in English. So I think that tension is so well portrayed in this poem because it does it with all of those specific images, the specific phrase, put attention, but it also does it with a sort of tenderness in the end. And I think that shift emboldens the other stanzas around it, making it so that we see not only the strangeness of the phrase, but also a sort of heartbreak of the phrase. So I think that move is so beautiful at the end when it becomes, oh, put attention. Like this is now a phrase that not only uh, was it part of my life, but now it's part of my heart. And it means something larger than just pay attention. And it's hard to get larger than pay attention as a poet, because that's all we want to do is pay attention. But then put attention has even a larger sense of, or a more intentional sense of looking, sense of holding something in yourself. And it does feel like at the end of the poem, that transition becomes a way of re-envisioning the grandmother. And I feel like the grandmother at the end is really beheld in some ways.